Tough as Nails is back, Season 2, Episode 8, and your Savage crew is back again to pick apart another episode of Tough as Nails. And, of course, we have our esteemed panel here back with us once again to talk about it. Here, ready to drive through any wall, Jessica Leese. Jess, how are you?
Doing great, Rob. I baked cookies. Oh, wait, no, this is just a big pan full of oil.
Oh, no. I thought that was chocolate syrup.
No, I don't think so. I'm going to have to taste it. No, definitely oil.
Okay. Are those blueberries or are they blackberries?
They were blueberries at one point.
Okay. All right. Of course, back with us once again, a man who always talks to inanimate objects and looks for them to respond to him. Here is Mike Bloom.
Isn't that what Brant Steels are, essentially? Us talking to inanimate objects and expecting responses back? So listen, I'm in for it. Phil can sass me all he wants, but I'm very much in the Arida camp of just talk out loud and see if a voice may respond to you at some point.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think that our blueberries are blackberries this morning as we are in mourning of Knuckles eliminated. I did not see that coming.
No.
Yes. Okay.
Jess has the hood up.
Yes. She's blanketing.
I'm blanketing.
Yes.
Very sad.
Yeah. That was wild that we ended up seeing. And now Arida all of a sudden is unstoppable in the overtimes.
The overtime assassin, Arida. Who would have thought? And this is, 2 in a row as well. She really has a streak going in that perspective and not just the oil streaks on her clothes. Yeah, I mean, this was tough. This was really tough. This is one of those examples we talked about a little bit with Meryl last week of like, when you like this cast so much, inevitably people you like have to go. But it was a little bit of a blindside considering that if we're trying to read the edit here, I do feel like for one reason or another, Knuckles was someone who we went to a lot and learned a lot about over the course of the season.
Yeah. Jess, I know that you are a self-proclaimed Knuckles stan. How are you doing?
I'm coping, Rob. I've been taking the day to digest this information. It's a little upsetting. I think at one point we were saying that Knuckles was like the young of the season 2 because she kept going into overtime and kept bouncing back. But now we're gonna have to revise that. I think it's Arida.
Yeah. Arida is 2 for 2 in the overtime. Knuckles seemed to have an Achilles heel and she mentioned in this episode, she's not good with tools. Give her like she'll climb up and down the orange tree. She's a hustler. But when it comes to even Mike, when they went to the stadium and she had to put the seats together, that was the other time she went to the overtime.
Well, then remember the very first time she was supposed to go to the overtime was her operating the bulldozer, and she couldn't do that either. So it really is like Knuckles takes medication warnings literally and says, like, I'm not going to operate heavy machinery. I'm not going to utilize tools. And as a result, this sort of came back to bite her here in that obviously I think her inexperience with working the bolts under the cars were something that sent her into overtime. And then from then on out, while it probably was one of the closest OTs we've had so far, I think it's just a general inexperience with tools that let her sort of fall under Arida here.
Yeah.
I would even go further and say it's less of a particular tool thing but more of a very many tiny steps and tiny tasks to do. This was a multi-part thing that she had to do. And it was hard to figure out, it wasn't necessarily obvious. What is the first thing you have to do? You have to get 3 different sockets. You have to open up 3 different types of bolts. So I can see where she gets really flustered when there's a lot of tiny steps and it's not obvious what the first thing you have to do is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. God knows I'd still be there.
Me too.
Yeah, I'd be like, what's this thing again? The oil pan, exhaust port? Mm-hmm. About to fire something in there to blow up the engine? Is that what we're doing in this OT, Phil?
Mm-hmm. Jess, I saw on Twitter that you had an interesting observation of being able to sort of identify sort of the general attitudes of a number of the Tough as Nails contestants.
Yeah, I had observed this while they were doing the first challenge. You had Zeus, who was ostensibly the crew boss. I'm not sure how someone that doesn't talk to the other contestants could make an effective crew boss. But you have him
Well,
saying,
in fairness, it wasn't super effective.
was not super effective.
Yeah.
I thought, well, first of all, we got to talk about the complicated mess that was this task. Like last season, it was like, go find one part out of a car. Yeah, go find the alternator. This was like, put together a whole ass car.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it so much. It was. I think this might be honestly my favorite challenge of the season.
Yeah, I loved it too. You know who didn't love it? Zeus, because he would have had to read the manual. And the personality types we saw here, it's like you were given a complicated task. You have Zeus that's like, I'm just going to dig in and I don't need the manual. I'm going to figure it out. Then you have Irida who's like, I'm going to go back and read the instructions again. Then you have Angel that's like, give me the thing.
I'm
hungry.
Want the
thing. Feed me.
Yeah.
Give me car parts.
Like
Jesse,
his literal quote.
There's a BuzzFeed quiz in the making of which Tough as Nails season 2 contestant are you?
Yeah, Buzzsaw
Buzz.
I'm surprised there isn't one already.
BuzzFeed me. Yeah.
This is just testament to how little CBS is marketing this show. They could be building BuzzFeed quizzes.
Yeah.
And it could go viral, but it's just right there for the picking. It's low-hanging fruit. Oh wait, that was another week, but you know what I mean.
So yeah, just I was thinking about what you wrote, and I was just thinking about it like in the context of like if there's ever like a do a podcast challenge, like I feel like I could imagine them. I just feel like that Angel would be sitting there like at the microphone, like, all right, I'm ready to go. Let's start the podcast. Come on, give me something. Let's start it.
Yeah, I think if we're trying to like disseminate podcast personalities, Zeus is just sort of like, yeah, I came in with like a rough plan, but we'll sort of go wherever it takes us. And like, as the moderator to sit back and let the guests talk. Angel is definitely the one who's like, nope, gotta talk about this. Okay, let's jump into the next thing. Come on. Let's get to listener questions. And then maybe Knuckles is more so like, okay, what are we doing here? I'm trying to, what's happening right now? I'm not entirely sure. This is chaotic.
Yeah, and Irida took notes.
Yeah.
Like, I need to go back to my notes for that.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, and she'd be like, all right, where are my notes? Come on, notes, where are you? Where'd you go? Notes, holler if you hear me. Notes, where are you?
So, all right, we were back at the pickup part. Do we know, was this the same one as in season 1?
I think so, yeah.
We'll have to ask Phil. I wonder, I mean, I can't imagine there were that many in the same area, so I'd imagine it looked similar, at least, to the infamous alternator stuff from season 1.
So we go into this battle for the teams here with a 4-3 Dirty Hands lead, and like maybe we're just too inside here, but I feel like there's 2 episodes left. I don't know how Savage Crew doesn't walk away with the win here today. Like, what would happen?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the next week it would just be like, okay, well, Savage Crew, despite losing, you could still earn money. But from that perspective, like, is Dirty Hands maybe going to ease up on the gas pedal a bit, to use a car analogy, and be like, all right, we already won our 60,000. Maybe they should get a little bit as well. I mean, I don't know. It was fortuitous or unfortuitous timing for Dirty Hands that they get the car challenge when their car guy is MIA. Again, still big question mark for the leading question of the series as to whether or not Freight Train will come back into the competition.
See, I almost feel like, both, Justin and I last week doubted you as to Freight Train's returnee status, but after this week, I feel like that there's almost no chance Freight Train isn't coming back because there's so much Freight Train talk.
Yeah, they don't talk about the other 2 who have left.
Yeah.
But it's, all Freight Train all the time. It's almost like he's still there, even though we know he's not physically there. He is like, his spirit is just chugging along with the rest of the team.
Yeah, I think Freight Train got more visibility this week than like Swifty or Meryl did.
Yep.
Yeah. So I feel like that we will see Freight Train once again. I don't know if it won't be until the finale, maybe?
Yeah,
He'll be in the finale for sure.
Definitely. I think the big question is he going to be there next week? I mean, yeah, it's so odd. Again, like, to just couple on, like you said, Rob, with what we talked about last week, it would just be so odd if he wasn't in the competition, and then we get all this talk, right, about, like, I hope we show up and Freight Train's there, and then you even have Phil in what might be a little bit of ADR say, well, Freight Train is still in quarantine for breaking the COVID bubble, right? It's not, well, Freight Train isn't here anymore, so he won't be back. There seems to be still a lot of contingencies that have been brought in. I don't know. I think it's doubtful he'll be back next week, but I agree. Even though he won't be doing anything team-wise, I think he'll probably be there in the finale, like rooting on those final four.
Just how good would Freight Train need to be with cars to have gotten Dirty Hands the win?
Well, I think they would have made him crew boss, which might have done it all by itself. I think you have the right person in charge and the right person that knows what they're doing. And it might have even been a blowout. But we're sliding doors here. I don't think there's any way we know for
Literally.
sure. Yeah.
because Freight Train used to, remember they showed the picture of him being like a drag racer?
Yeah, he was basically Danny Zuko.
Yeah, so maybe he was able to put these cars together by himself in the garage. But okay, no Freight Train, and so you had to go pick out all of the car parts, and I was confused, and maybe one of you has more insight into this than I did, but was it one car that they were like taking apart and then building back as another car, or did you have to find the parts from different vehicles in the pick apart?
Dead air. I don't think Mike or I could tell you. I don't think we are not car people.
No, we're not car talk people. I would imagine it's a bunch of different cars, because what's the contest in that if it's all one car, right? Then Phil would just say, run out to the clearly marked car in the graveyard and find the parts. I would imagine that, much like the individual challenge, it was a lot of, okay, you kind of have to scavenge your way through all these various cars. I mean, we might do some shot-by-shot comparisons. It doesn't seem like they were scrapping parts off of the same car, because if so, then it really is just take the parts off of one car and put them all onto another car. Though I guess we didn't get a look at the final vans to just see how, like, jank they looked, with all like, here's a red door and a blue hood and 4 different types of wheels.
Those are the different types of cars where Mike is concerned. Red and blue.
Yeah, I very much have like a 7-year-old vocabulary when it comes to cars.
Yeah, I think it had to be really, really Byzantine if that's the case, though, because not every part goes on every car.
Right.
Like, it's not 1-to-1. I mean, everything I know about cars comes from the Johnny Cash song "One Piece at a Time," and I know he had to do some work to get all those pieces to fit together, and that was all Cadillac. Like, what if you have different brands? You can't just take a door off of one car and put it on another car, so you don't even know red and blue.
Yeah,
take the door off the red car and put it on the blue one.
Maybe there was a happy medium here where there was like a selection of 5 or 6 cars they could choose between. Because there was that one scene, right, where in one of the many communication breakdowns on Dirty Hands, Irida has a battery, and then Angel's like, look, I have a battery right here, look at the battery. And they're like, no, I already have a battery. And those are clearly coming from 2 separate cars.
Yeah. I just wonder, like, how many, like, 2004 Dodge minivans did they have here in the pick apart?
Well, Rob, it is the biggest pick apart ever. I don't know what the exact superlative was. P.S. I did Google this. There are at least a dozen salvage yards called Pick Your Part in the greater Los Angeles area. So,
okay.
You guys have so much space out there. Like, as a New Yorker, this is hard to envision.
Yes. But which one has like the Guinness World Record of being world's biggest pick apart?
I mean, did they call Guinness to verify that? Because if they didn't, I'm not going to call it that.
Mike, do you think that Roofer Lee was jealous that he didn't get to hang out there in the pick apart? That was like his favorite place to hang out.
What should have happened is, obviously, had these circumstances not occurred, Phil should have said, okay, Freight Train won't be participating, but you get a ringer for this challenge, Dirty Hands. Roofer Lee, come on in.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
Like, it's like on that in Survivor Israel, right? Where that tribe won Rupert as a reward. You get Roofer Lee here.
I have to imagine Rupert Lee would be better at that than Rupert was.
Yeah.
Rupert Lee.
Yeah, Rupert Lee.
That would be wild to have somebody, one of the alumni, come in. You know, like I feel like that in a world that was like not undergoing a global pandemic, like I feel like that, like in the Find Your Inner Murph challenge, it would be great to actually have Murph there. So like it would be fun in future seasons to bring in like the alumni.
I would love that though, because the point of that challenge was that like Murph conquered his fear, but he did finish in last place.
But he won the show.
There are different kinds of victories, Michael.
Yeah.
But I do love the idea. Survivor South Africa, this season that Shannon and I just watched, did this where like there was a reward challenge, and whoever won the reward challenge got to use a sports celebrity on their team for the immunity challenge. Like imagine the team challenge is, all right, you've won. Danny Drywall is going to help you out for the next team challenge.
Yeah. Well,
Put
looks
up
like
that
next
roof.
week is the Memorial Danny Drywall Challenge.
Are they
Yeah.
putting up drywall?
It looks like it, right? They're like putting up something in the house.
I saw Angel holding up like Atlas style, sort of like when we saw Danny doing in his intro shots, right? Just holding the piece of slate
Raise the
above her
roof.
head.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they're writing a musical. Maybe they're finally writing a musical, Mike.
Nothing to do in quarantine but that.
Jess, I was very surprised that Savage Crew sat out Meryl this week. And so, we had talked about last week, could you sit out the same person back-to-back weeks? It seems like that it didn't come up to sit Selly out for this competition. But I was really surprised they went with Meryl, because we heard from Meryl a couple of weeks ago that Meryl used to work with the mechanics on the planes because she wanted to know how every part of the planes work. And I felt like that there was at least some parallel skill sets between plane parts and car parts. No,
They all have bolts and they're all made out of metal. I think it's pretty much like you could just go out and get the door off the plane and put it on the car. I don't know. It's a curious choice, but it also it worked fine. They did great.
Well-
I have to imagine that the rule is that you can't sit people out in back-to-back challenges. Now that we've seen this, we didn't really get into it. Like when Phil's here, I think we should flag that to ask him. But yeah, I don't really know why they would sit her out unless other people have actually worked on a car and not a plane.
Well, I don't know. This kind of was Sully's challenge, because I feel like, now look, here's the line of logic. She is known not to be the best driver. She has often seen the inside of a mechanic's shop, probably more times than your average
Yes.
bear. Could it be that she knows car parts better than anyone else just through osmosis?
It's a very good point.
Maybe. And while we talked about dirty hands, and they, maybe did they psych themselves out because on the way to the pick apart, like, as long as it's not car challenge today, we're doing great. Anything but car parts. And then they showed it like, wait, let's make a left turn here, go into this junkyard. Don't!
Yeah, this is one of the biggest cluster Fs I think we've seen on Tough as Nails ever. And Phil really mentioned it, right? The fact that it was a really difficult challenge, but Dirty Hands was just all over the map. Quite literally, people were getting lost. They were bringing back duplicate parts. Angel was insistent that, oh, you need this front seat, even though I just brought back a front seat. Everyone was just incredibly confused. There was not a unifying voice, whether from Zeus or anyone else. And as a result, exactly. And it's, as a result, they ended up jinxing themselves, much like Stephanie LaGrossa did back in 2010.
Yes.
At what point did they actually...
yeah, go ahead.
At one point, did they actually put a door on the wrong side of the car? Like, how does that even work? How would you even get it on there?
Well, I think it was that. So they already, let's say they already took apart a left door and were going to put it on, and they were going for right door. I think Zeus took off another left door and was like, crap, I took off the wrong side door, and I can't just, this isn't a tire, I can't just flip it around.
They didn't put the left door on the right side.
Right, exactly. It was more so that they had two left doors.
Okay.
Meanwhile, for Savage Crew, this was Scott's turn at redemption. And so we got to hear some of Scott's backstory and some of how Scott was feeling coming into the challenge, that he really let the Savage Crew down last week. Now, Mike, was this an underreported story of how Scott was responsible for the slip-ups in the gardening challenge? Because I didn't really remember that being part of the story last week. But, I mean, Scott is talking about... And Phil really was hanging a spotlight on how Scott really screwed up the gardening challenge last week.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like our takeaway, at least last week, was it was more of a Swifty thing than a Scott thing, right? That Swifty's leadership, he's the one that's putting things in the, planting the plants still in their plastic. He's the one who's not really delegating. Even Swifty himself last week said, I take this loss. So I find it interesting that Scott sort of has his own personal perspective into it, feeling like, oh, I was way too quiet last time, and so I really need to step up. I mean, for what it's worth, we saw this as well in the very first challenge that they won when they were building the house. Like, when Scott takes charge, he might be one of the best leaders on the show. Like, it is incredibly efficient, the job he is able to do, which makes sense given that this is his day to day. So I'm happy that, you know, he was able to step up. But yeah, I agree. An interesting narrative that's a little incongruous with, I think, our own perspective of what happened during that landscaping challenge last week.
Yeah, I just thought they were like, everybody was being kind of hard on Scott based on what we saw from last week's show, but it must have been something that was talked about there, because, you know, Scott himself like started the episode talking about the self-doubt he had after that, and then it was also coming from Phil. He's talking about how the Dirty Hands car looked like what the Savage Crew's garden looked like.
Yeah, it is not very effective storytelling in this instance. I have no idea what Scott was doing that last week, and they didn't show it to us. Like we even remarked, we don't really know what Scott is doing. And we always know what Scott is doing because he's getting the OTTP edit. And it was almost like they're apologizing to us for not showing us enough Scott, which I understand and I accept your apology, Tough as Nails.
Yeah.
So, I mean, on that note, we big episode, I would say, for both Scott and Sarah alike, and I'm sure we'll talk about Sarah later, but I mean, this is when we get like a big introduction for someone that I know Scott talks a lot about on his social media profiles, which is the fact that he underwent a lot of bullying as a kid. And I really, Scott's picture was so cute. I mean, look, I know that we are sort of, I think, part of that same group of people that probably would face some harassment on the way to chorus class outside of school as well. But it was also really interesting to see this perspective, because I do feel like up until this point, the only thing we really got from Scott was like, oh, he's the front runner. And so with any of these shows and with any of these sort of people that are in it to win it, I always like when we find out a little bit more personal information about them and how even someone like Scott had something that he had to overcome to get to the position he's in.
Yeah, and you know things were bad because that Scott said, I believe he got bullied by the band.
Did he say the band?
Was it band?
Wow.
Or maybe he was, or was it? I don't want to misquote it. Or was he coming out of the band? But I feel like that, you know, if you're in the pecking order where the band is coming after you.
Yeah, that's rough.
Is that just like the chain of bullying where like the band kids were getting picked on for like,
yeah,
all right,
it all goes downhill, right?
Yeah, I promise you, I was a band geek and we didn't have anybody to bully. Like there was nobody else down there. Like, and P.S. I don't trust anybody who wasn't bullied in middle school. That is, it is character building, and I bet it was very gratifying when Scott got his growth spurt, and then he was like 2 feet taller than everybody else in his school. Yeah, that must have felt really good.
I watched this episode with my wife last night, and she was saying that she also had the headset, which I think that might be her origin story of how she turned into a bully. Then after that.
I think it's how she turned into a podcaster. She's having a headset on at all times.
No, I don't know. So that's an interesting backstory for the First Lady of Podcasting.
Wow.
Do you want to talk about Sarah, that we also got some of her backstory? And just, I feel like similar to Irida, where that, and it had been mentioned on the show that Sarah is diabetic, and then in her a lot of her like pregame press, she talked about how she wanted to change the narrative. But we saw Selly like having to check in with Sarah and check on her insulin. And she talked about like just how often she has to check her insulin levels. And I was really blown away. She has to wake up in the middle of the night to check her insulin. And as somebody who really like, you wake me up in the middle of the night, very hard for me to get back to sleep. Could you imagine?
Well, I think you must get used to it. I think it's just what you have to go through. And I really have been enjoying, we've had a lot of awareness of how difficult it is to manage type 1 diabetes. I think also we talked about during Amazing Race, it was something that Leo talked about, and it's come up in various times. I think Amazing Race 17, they had one of Nat or Kat, I cannot remember who, but it is something that it's something that has to be in the back of your head all day, every day. Where's my blood sugar at? Where's my blood sugar at? And it does really hamper your ability to do something like this. So I think you have to be like even tougher to be on Tough as Nails and be in these really intense situations, but also have to keep in the back of your mind that your blood sugar is relevant.
It was a really interesting balance of portrayal where on the one hand they really underline the severity of it, right? Where Selly's saying like, "Oh, you're at 60 right now. Well, technically it's 70. I'm supposed to call the doctor." But at the same time, then you have Sarah being like, "I felt my blood sugar crash, but I had to push through it." So it is a thing of it should be something that's taken very seriously, but at the same time, it is not something to preclude you from being a normal person, that you can still work through things. And that's a very big reason why I'm very glad that Sarah's on the show. And let me say firsthand to our new arrival here on the podcast, Phil Keoghan, I mean, thank you for helping cast Sarah on the show, because I do feel like she is a great example of how bringing someone on who, if you don't necessarily know someone with type 1 diabetes and you think it is like a life ender for so many people in terms of living a normal life, that is very much the opposite as Sarah shows.
And excuse my ignorance, but do you have some connection to type 1 diabetes?
I do not. And so that's why I really valued it. I've luckily, I guess social media has allowed me to connect with those who are. And, I have found out about things about your blood sugar level crashing in the middle of the night and a chance of you dying in your sleep. Do you not wake up at fortuitous times? And so it's a scary existence, yet it's a livable existence, I think is what Sarah is putting across here. And it's very meaning to me, someone who, does not experience that firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yep.
I have a really close friend who has type 1 diabetes, and it has come up like several times, like every few years, something happens that puts her in the hospital for a couple of weeks. And it's been a hard thing for her to manage. And it's a really stressful thing to go through. So I love when we get visibility. And I think she also loves when there's visibility for it on a show like this.
There was a cycling team, a professional cycling team, type 1, I think is what the name of the cycling team was. And they literally were all type 1s, and they were out there to prove that you could be a professional athlete and still perform really well. And, I think this again speaks to the beauty of having people through the whole season is, had we front loaded that story of Sarah at the front of the season, people would have been looking at everything she's achieved along the way based on, oh, she's a type 1 diabetic. Oh, hasn't she done well? And we wanted to leave that story nugget of her at a time where she kind of excelled against the best that were left. And then say, and everybody does a kind of double take. You mean this whole time she's been dealing with this and she's done that, and it, to me, it really accentuated the point that she was making, which was it doesn't stop you from doing things, but it does mean you've got to make certain allowances and adjustments. And so I love that moment at the end. And I love how Sally came in and was taking care, and we learned something. I learned something. And again, what a great takeaway. The next time we meet another type 1, the audience maybe will not see that as some kind of hindrance for living a full life, but you've got to manage it, but you can still do extraordinary things.
Yeah, that's an interesting shift in terms of like a lot of times on a reality TV show, if somebody has some sort of like condition that they are dealing with on the show, that's the first thing that we know about them, and we end up like sort of like thinking about that person, like who's that? Oh, the diabetic that's on the show, like
right.
And then that's a really interesting way to sort of like the way that you might like in real life like meet somebody and then learn about that they have a condition is like definitely humanizing them in a different way as opposed to just like looking at them through the condition that you get up front.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, and how many times do we just do that, right? Like we have sort of, we have bias, right? Like we hear somebody comes from a certain place, or, we hear an accent and we make certain assumptions. I just read a fantastic book, by the way, called, I think it's called You Say Potato. And it's all about accents. I'm fascinated with accents. But, how we judge people by the way that they speak, by the way that they dress, we immediately make these assumptions about people. And so for a lot of people, they hear somebody is type 1 diabetic, they make an assumption immediately about that person. And she kind of proved that she could compete on Tough as Nails and was a force. And then it was revealed, and she's done that managing her type 1 diabetes. So,
Mm.
because in episode 2, there was a moment where she also had to check her blood sugar and it got low because the slime meal challenge went on quite a long time. And we deliberately did not use that scene in episode 2 because we later on, back producing from the end, we decided that this episode in 8 was the most poignant moment or best time to share that story. So I'm sorry, I'm a little late. We were, what were we doing? We were meeting about the last show, going through.
We were trying to come up with an excuse to show up late to dinner this time.
Yeah. No, so anyway, it's nice to talk to you guys. Did you enjoy last night's episode?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
I mean, to that point, what Phil was this sort of a reprise of last season? We were trying to figure out, was this indeed the same pick apart that we went to last season with the alternators?
Yeah, it was. And part of the reason was, again, just the challenge of finding new locations and new locations that could cope with or could accommodate us with the space that you need to set up COVID production. And again, I mean, I've spoken about it before, but we're not shooting in the Big Brother house. We haven't got one location that we keep going back to where we can just, once we've got it locked in, once we have the protocol set, it's like, okay, done with that. Now we focus on everything else. We had to focus on this every single location and, 30 challenges or how many ever it is. And every single time. So yeah, we ended up back there. But to be honest with you, we started with the challenge and then it was about where we were going to do it. And other locations we looked at that could have worked, looked very similar. I mean, you go to a pick apart, they're pretty similar looking. You got a bunch of dead cars stacked up, things being crushed, big machines driving around. So yeah. And it was just magical there. I mean, I just loved the look of the show. It was so much fun to grade all those primary colors. It looked like another world. So it was one of my favorite shows to take into post just because of the opportunity for really drawing out all those colors. It just looked amazing. I thought so. And I do want to assure your viewers that the oil spilt was cleaned up. We left no drop of oil on the ground. Our show is incredibly environmentally conscious.
So when you were saying, like, when Swifty spilled the bunch, like, oh, we're gonna have to clean that up, was that said with like a hint of bitterness, like, damn it, that's more work for the cleaning
a little bit like, dude, do you really have to spill that because we got to clean it up? But no, it's just I sort of find it humorous when people. I find it humorous when people make the assumption that you're doing the wrong thing rather than making the assumption that you might have done the right thing. It's just sort of interesting to me. Like, not even a question like, I hope you cleaned up that oil, ? No, it's, I'm assuming you have not cleaned up that oil and that's an environmental hazard. And my husband pointed out that, and then immediately it's like, we've done all this bad stuff. And so I had to reply to somebody and say, I can assure you, and hashtag be better. Okay.
Gosh.
So
Yeah,
I had to.
We've gotten those.
Yeah.
I had to. I was just very polite, and I just said, please rest assured, let your husband know that all the oil that was spilt was cleaned up, and that we have a very strict environmental mandate throughout the entire production. We have boxed water. We make sure that our utensils are recyclable, like everything. We're really strict. We use bamboo plates. We go to great lengths, and it costs us extra money to be more environmentally conscious because a lot of environmental choices end up costing you more money at the front end.
Sure.
Because it's so much easier to just throw stuff away and that sort of thing. Anyway, it's just, I get it. People are concerned and all of that, but I do hope there's kind of a shift as we get out of, a very tough year. We get to a shift of, I'm assuming you did the right thing, as opposed to, I'm assuming you're doing the wrong thing. It's like, let's kind of try to, and everybody needs to be pulled up. on things because we don't get everything right. But let's be a little more in the, maybe you did the right thing. And thank
Amen,
you.
Phil. Amen.
Yeah.
Yes. Phil, what was the secret in terms of the individual challenge? Do you feel like that, as somebody who was able to watch the whole thing, was there like was it just like being able to get the bolt open the fastest, or was it like a certain type of car was really like the jackpot?
It was, to me, and I said it at the top, there's so many times when we're all faced with doing a job and we don't have the right tools. How many times have people been stuck in the wilderness and they've got a broken down tractor? I remember my grandfather telling me a story about he was out, it was during the Depression, and he was actually, I think I could tell this story without offending anybody, but because goodness knows it's
Always a
hard
good
to
start to
tell
a
it.
story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a good story, but could that good story offend somebody? I hope it doesn't offend anybody. Anyway, my grandfather was out on a date and the car broke down and he had to fix the fan belt, and he asked his date to take off her pantyhose so that he could turn her pantyhose into a fan belt, and that's how they got home. Again, if I've offended anybody,
Yeah,
by
as long as
telling
that
this
wasn't
story,
his move, it was a one-time thing. I
it
think
was
it's okay.
literally.
Yeah.
I'm just
Oh,
saying.
I can't believe it. The fan
The
belt
car broke down.
Yeah. No, it was a legit, like, that's
Mhm.
what he needed to fix it. But my point is, so many times you're forced to have to complete a job and you don't have the right tool and you have to make do. You have to use ingenuity. And so that exercise was really a test of, yeah, you would not collect oil in an oil pan and then transport the oil in an oil pan to a container to put it in. You'd get a proper container so that there'd be no drops, and then you would take that recycled oil. That's how they do it on the lot. But this was an exercise in, okay, how are they going to cope with observing where the bigger engines are, picking cars that they had potential to have more oil, identifying, like where those were, the closest big engines were to where they were, keeping a track of, oh, I already tried that engine, or watching out for somebody else trying that engine and seeing that they didn't get anything from that engine. So there was a lot going on. It was a very we put them in a stressful situation, and the goal was to see who could cope with the stress. And Sarah she's like an ice cold competitor. Like when she gets into competitive mode, she just laser focused, and I think that's why she won. You saw Scott slipped over. Scott was doing well, but he slipped over. He was panicking a little bit, and then Knuckles got in his head by sliding under and taking his oil, and it was getting in his head. And I think Sarah's the one that kept her cool doing the job. Even her pours were slower. Like she was not rushing her pours. She was getting more of the oil in. And that's how she got the victory.
So going back to the team challenge, Phil, can you describe just how chaotic it was in the moment for Dirty Hands? Because it really did come across to us as Savage Crew, United Front, Dirty Hands all over the place. Was that really the sense as well at the time and on the lot? It
was almost exactly it was the polar opposite for each team of what happened in the landscaping challenge. Dirty Hands and the landscaping challenge were all together, organized. Knuckles took control. Arida was paying attention to details. Angel and Zeus were working for them in terms of getting the soil in there, cutting the concrete bricks. And Savage Crew fell apart. They just fell apart. And it was exactly the opposite in the car building challenge. Dirty Hands never got it together. They just, and Zeus was saying he didn't need instructions. Well, clearly everybody else did. So that's where you got to be more of a team player, maybe, and go, okay, I don't need instructions. But then I think Knuckles said, well, I do. Like, I don't know how to do this. I need the instructions. And everything that they had to do was carefully laid out in those plans and instructions that we gave them. So I think, Zeus was the leader, and I think, I think he would be the first to admit that one of the things you learn about being a team member is that you can't assume that everybody else knows what you know, that you sometimes have to make allowances and go, oh, okay, I don't need instructions, but I better make sure that to get the best out of my teammates, I help them understand or assign them a job and say, here's the instructions. You're in charge of the light bulbs. I mean, the headlamps, sorry, not light bulbs. But whereas I think, that was, the challenge was really a moment for us to see Savage Crew working really well as a coordinated team. Scott was very clear with his directions. I loved how Sally kicked into operation mode. She just treated it like she was in an operation. Yeah, you tell me what you need. I'll get the tool to you. I'll make sure. Sponge, scalpel, suction. It's like I love that bit from her. And she's shown that all season long. Like she's prepared to jump in and do whatever needs to be done whenever it needs to be done. And they came together as a team, and it was a great victory. And, we ended up with our dream situation where we have a tie going. We've got a tiebreaker again. I mean, the chances of that are minuscule. And for the person who said that they felt the show was scripted, which I thought was kind of funny, and that somehow I could convince all these people, listen, guys, I got a great idea. You lose that one, and then you're going to win the next one, and then we'll get to a 4-4 thing because that's going to be great. Are you good with that? All of you people with high integrity and, all of you honest people, are you good with that? Because I like to script things, and it would be great to go 4-4 into the finale. Are you good with that? Everybody good with that? Okay, great.
Yeah, so, Phil, we had some questions about the mechanics behind this challenge, particularly we wondered about...
Not the mechanics in the challenge?
No, not the mechanics in the challenge. The mechanics of the challenge. We were wondering about the decision to sit Meryl out, and we wanted to know if there's actually a rule that says that they can't sit the same person out every time.
No, I'd have to double check that, but my instinct would be no. I think the goal, what we said to them was the decision you need to make is who is the right person to sit out this challenge. Had they wanted to sit Sully out again, I don't think we would have argued with that. That's a team choice. And we shouldn't be handicapping them in any way. They had to sit somebody out to begin with. They should be able to put who they feel are the 4 strongest people for that particular job. Just because Dirty Hands are down a teammate doesn't mean that should affect Savage Crew being able to put forward who they believe are the best 4 people to go up against them. So I'd have to double check that, but it's not a rule that I would support. I would say, no, let them, this is a team thing. And sometimes in a team, you figure out who's going to sit on the bench because maybe one of your good players has got a bad ankle and you think, let's play somebody else who's not maybe as good a player, but has a better ankle today. So yeah, I would like to say that, yeah, I mean, we never got to that. It never got to that, but it's a good question. And I guess it's something that we should prepare for, but I would advocate for, no, you sit out whoever you want to sit out.
Yeah. And I mean, not to be results oriented, but it seemed like it was the right choice ultimately.
Yeah, it was. And I think what's great about everybody on the show is that the egos are such that they understand what it's like to work on a team. And I think they could see, I think they're about the team and what's best for the team. It's not like I have to be in this because I need to do it for me. So I think Meryl volunteered to sit out because she felt that it would be more helpful maybe to have someone like Sally. Maybe she saw a strength in Sally, that Sally was going to be that really good assistant and be able to help, because she was working very closely with Scott, if you notice, throughout, handing tools to him, listening to him and what he had to say. She was very comfortable taking that role to support, and she mentioned it. And And I think they all came together. And, Sarah, of course, absolutely rock solid. Swifty, completely different energy level from him from last week. They were a really good team, I thought.
Phil, can you talk about Arida, and now that she has won back-to-back overtime challenges, it really feels like that she's coming on very strong here towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, these are the things that you hope for at the beginning of a season, that you get a story where she had the least amount of confidence of everybody in the entire show. She said things like, I'm not even sure I belong in this group. She doubted herself. She was constantly surprised every time she beat out some of the other people on the show. And so I love watching that. I love to see her confidence grow. I think now, after the show, she's talked about the fact that I think she stands up straighter. I think she holds her head higher, not in an arrogant way, but just in a, you know what? I'm actually a bit of a badass, and I've proven it. I've gone up against some really tough competitors, and I deserve to be here. And so I love to see that. I've loved to watch that arc, and people have fallen in love with her online because she represents a lot of other people who maybe, Knuckles spoke about this in the window washing and the wall painting episode, where she spoke to Zeus about being a woman, and where she was never encouraged to speak out confidently about her abilities, whereas it sort of just came naturally to Zeus, like as a man. And I'm generalizing because not all women are like that, and not all men are like that. But that was I think a culture where maybe Yoraida also was not necessarily encouraged to speak out and be confident about her abilities. But she's proven, rather than just talking about it, she's actually proven that she has all the skills and abilities to be on tough as nails.
And then on the other side of that, you mentioned Knuckles. Something that I really appreciated was Knuckles puts out the pretty obvious statement of like, I can't wait to watch this with my son. And then she adds at the end of that, because I want to teach him that when you're not confident about doing certain things, you should almost like steer into that curve. And I think that's such an interesting lesson, right? Some people might, when faced with a lot of things that you don't know, would just say, stick with what you're good at. It's okay that you're not good at everything. But, Knuckles, despite losing at this juncture, really does come back or come out of the game or the individual game with this attitude of, okay, I'm not good at everything, but nobody is. And you should take advantage of those things as learning opportunities. Am I going to be draining oil from a car? No, but I learned things about myself through exposing myself to things I've never done before.
Yeah. Knuckles is a very special woman. I think the one of the reasons that she is one of the most popular on this season is because of her humility. She's opened up. It's a big deal to go on national television and to expose some of your weaknesses and to own them. And we've celebrated victories with her, and we have also seen her become extremely vulnerable and open up. And what better lesson is there to teach your child than owning up to some of the things you need to work on and then facing them head on? In my book, No Opportunity Wasted, my book, I have a chapter which is called Face Your Fear. For years, I had this near-death experience. I was deathly afraid of claustrophobic, tight spaces, and I deliberately went to dive the world's longest underwater caves under the Yucatan jungle as a mental exercise to let fear know that it was not my fear of tight spaces and my fear of being trapped underground was not going to control me. That if I really put my mind to it, I could control that fear. It's not you ever necessarily get over that fear. I'm still petrified about being in tight spaces, but I proved to myself that I could go there. I could allow my mind to go there. And, if you live in a comfort zone like this, I'm holding up my hands here, like with a small separation. If you live in that little comfort zone in the cotton wool, of life, where you're trying to protect yourself from going too low, or you're trying to protect yourself from going too high, and you're just trying to keep it there, right there in the middle. When something crazy happens in your life that takes you to 100, if you haven't had the mental practice, the practice of trying things you're not good at, pushing yourself, it comes as such a shock. You're not as well versed in coping with it. So I think the lesson that Knuckles is trying to share with their kids is, if you're not good at something, go that way, steer that way, try to learn from that and be stronger, and it will help you in all aspects of your life. So I think that's what she was saying. And I think, yeah, what better lesson for us to teach our kids, that don't just shy away from things you're not good at or scared of. Actually turn in that direction and face them head on. It'll make you stronger. It'll make you a better person. It'll make you more understanding. And it'll help you in all aspects of life.
Phil, can I ask you a question about we have Knuckles, who was eliminated from the competition, and she was so great, and she still is on the show, but is just such a great narrator for the show. I'm just wondering, now we're 2 seasons into Tough as Nails. Would you ever consider a Tough as Nails All-Stars, or is that idea of bringing people back sort of like against the ethos of the show, where we're finding people who are just from all walks of life and bringing them into this competition?
No, I would absolutely consider it. And I would also listen to the fans of Tough as Nails. I mean, I could see a time where they're so connected off the show. I caught up with Freight Train a couple of days ago, just checking in. I've checked in on a number of people on the show. And I just wanted to check in on him. And he was about to go back to work to deliver 80 more packages for the rest of the day. And
wow,
he and his wife sent me this great T-shirt. And so I wanted to thank him. Look, I think there's an opportunity for some redemption, for some people to come back and have another crack at it, or somebody like a Danny who came so close but didn't quite make it. No, I'd definitely be open to that idea. I think they're so connected off the show, both season 1 and season 2 people, and already season 2 people are talking about connecting with people on season 3. They reached out to each other. We didn't say, hey, it would be really great if you guys connected. You know, you're both on Dirty Hands. And by the way, a lot of discussion amongst them all about this whole legacy thing. And yeah, no, they said that had they not been a part of Dirty Hands, they wouldn't have necessarily reached out to other people on Dirty Hands, but the people they reached out to were the people on Dirty Hands. So I think that, yeah, I get the whole, let's change it up and make a whole new name every season. And that makes the most sense now because the franchise is young. But I think in 5 years' time, I could see the best of the best in Dirty Hands or the best of the best in Savage Crew coming back and competing against each other. Can you imagine? Like
Dirty Hands All-Stars versus Savage Crew All-Stars.
Into like the Pro Bowl. I mean, it's an interesting idea though, right? Because you talk a lot about, struggles and adversity that occur in your life off of Tough as Nails. But like now there's sort of this inner narrative, right? Where you have someone like, you can bring back Irida or a Young, someone who has survived so many overtimes. Like they're building almost
the overtimers.
Yeah, exactly. They're building narratives of their own adversity within the show of Tough as Nails as well. So that if you do decide to do a returning player season, they almost have their own difficulties that they faced inside of the game as well as outside of the game now.
Yeah, I think that's really an interesting approach. And look, I think you got to be open to all possibilities. I think part of the creative process is just, it's like that improv thing, where I did a lot of improv theater where you always say yes to the craziest idea, even if you're like looking at the person going, what did you just say? Like, how did we turn that direction? You go, yes, that's a great idea. And
yes, we'll use the pantyhose and the fan belt, of course.
Listen, like I said, if I've offended anybody, I just want you to know my grandfather was well-intentioned. He wanted to get home. I think they were stuck somewhere out along the Buller River somewhere in the West Coast, and they needed to get home before dark or whatever. I don't know. Please assume that the right things were happening. I can't take any more. Jess, I just want to say your son is George. Is that correct?
Yeah. George.
And I just want to say that your son absolutely outdid me with the plaid. Please let him know he's won the plaid competition. I can't compete with that kind of plaid, or the look, quite frankly. And George takes the prize for best plaid of the week.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
best
Where's
dress.
the badge
Amazing.
of honor?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to make one, I think. Yeah, it was just crazy to see you in that orange plaid shirt. I'm like, that's what George was wearing like 3 days ago.
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, I got the memo from George. He said, "Could you please wear the orange plaid shirt?"
Yep.
Rob, we need a little ding for George, if that's all right. Can we get a? There we go.
He's gonna love that.
The winner.
Yeah, his favorite thing to do is he just kind of walks up to me and says, "Mommy, are you tough as nails?" And I'll say, "Sure, George." And then he just falls over laughing because it's the most ridiculous thing ever.
That's well, okay. I thought he was going to walk up to you and go, "Time to get to work."
Dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're working on that. His Phil impression is not quite up to snuff yet.
Yeah.
It's not there yet. Okay.
Not
All
there.
right. Well, he's got the dress down, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any should I be asking you questions? Because everybody likes when I'm not on from my production.
Yeah.
And then B, when I ask you a question, because then it's
That's
about
a
you guys
small
talking.
sample size you're talking to, though, Phil. Of people that
Exactly.
Yeah,
like when you're
Phil,
not
like-
on.
They're literally the only ones that do not like it when you're on.
Mhm.
but how do we steer things off the rails, you know, to address that listener that loves it when we all get together and anything could happen, crazy
Mhm.
things. All right,
You can't
so
force it, Phil. You have to let it
Yeah.
happen organically.
we're just gonna let it go
Yeah.
off the
Well,
rails.
let
Can-
it.
can I share with you- That one of my favorite moments last night was when you asked them who here knows what an oil pan does. That was my
Yeah,
favorite.
there's a lot of sassy Phil last night between that and, of course, like the Irida is talking to an engine and it's not talking back because it's an engine.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes, a young producer on the team actually dug that out and then asked me, played it to me and said, "Are you okay if we put this in?" And I said, "Hell yeah. Like that's, we got to show a little humanity. Like if you can't laugh at, if I've somehow offended any engines out there listening who can talk back, I apologize for any engines I've offended. Yeah, no, that's because it's an engine. No, it's just like, gosh, we need a little levity. We all need to laugh just a little bit more in this world, I think.
Yeah.
Unless you guys going to tell me now that engines really do talk back. Wasn't there some cartoon animation where there was an engine? I guess that was, oh, I know, someone in production, I said, "Oh, nobody talks back." I said, no engine talks back. And they went, "Yeah, no kidding, Captain Obvious." And then I said, "Well, don't you remember Kit? He talked back." Right?
He was a
David
whole bar.
Hasselhoff.
Yeah, I believe Kit actually turned like 90-something. William Daniels turned 90-something this week, the voice of
Did he
Kit.
really?
That
Yeah.
came up on another podcast I was on.
So for those listeners who don't know who Kit is, Kit was a car that David Hasselhoff, and if you don't know who David Hasselhoff is, he was the guy from Baywatch. And if you don't know what Baywatch is, that was like the biggest TV show in the world for like a very, very long time. Yes, the car would talk to David Hasselhoff's character. What was the name? Knight Rider was the name of the show?
Knight Irida.
Yes,
Knight
exactly.
Irida. That's
Yeah.
right. Knight
And the
Irida.
car would run over people's feet, and then
Oh, no.
it's about the
Mike.
class.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
But I believe David Hasselhoff's character was named Michael, I think.
Yeah, he was Michael
Yes.
Knight, and then he was
Michael.
He was
And
also
then
a writer.
how did Kit's voice go? Can you guys, any of you do it?
I think we're all too young for that, Phil.
Okay,
Like,
got it.
I'm
All right.
afraid I can't do that, Michael. But then
Yeah,
no,
no,
that's
I'm-
Hal. That's not Mike.
because they brought it back. I remember in the 2000s where Will Arnett was the voice, and it was primarily because people wanted him to say like Michael in his deep
Michael.
exactly like what he would do on Arrested Development, and so that was part of the reason why they brought it back for a short amount of time.
Okay.
That's
But
very strange.
You with the Kubrick reference there, right? You're going way back to HAL days.
Yeah, that's old school.
Jeez,
It's
that's
timeless.
real old school. I'm too young for those kinds of references. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Phil, I wanted to give you a note actually.
Okay, good.
Because I think you're here for notes.
Yes.
My favorite thing that you do in the show is, and I want you to do this for every challenge now, is
Yes.
you hold up a relevant piece of equipment and you say, who knows what this is? This should be something you do every time, even if it's something really dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Like hold up the orange and be like, who knows what this is?
Does everybody know what this is?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to
make that a thing.
I'll make that a thing. I do love asking the questions, the obvious questions. And I love the look on her writer's face where she's kind of like, holds the oil? Like, yes, that's right. It's not a trick question.
That's a writer's story in a nutshell, though, right? Like, she's not confident that she knows what the answer is, but she knows what the answer is.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, look, it's just a matter of trying to have some fun. We had a great moment, by the way. I posted it online, but we had a little barbecue after that overtime, and Swifty got on the barbecue and showed off his barbecuing skills and cooked up some great burgers. And we had sort of like the backyard moment, in episode 7 of season 1, where we were in the backyard and everybody just got together and we pulled out a few of the Tough as Nails ales. And nobody, just so you know, nobody driving had a beer. But just want to make that clear. Everybody driving had a soda pop, non-alcoholic water, hydrated. Everybody was hydrated. So we enjoyed a beer and a burger, and it was just great. It was the end of the day. The sun was setting. It's just a really good camaraderie. And I just remember thinking how cool it was to be able to hang out with such an eclectic mix of people. And as Freight Train said, he said, he's become very, very close with Zeus. And he said, not in a million years, if you told me, a year ago that I was going to be best friends with a guy called Zeus from Hawaii, with tattoos on his neck, and that we were going to be best friends and talk every single day, sometimes twice a day. He said, I would have told you were crazy. And he said, but I am. And he said, we all talk and we're like this unlikely group of people that have come together and we really like each other. And it just makes me and all of us on the production, it makes us feel really good to know that we've created a culture where the contestants actually really like each other and they respect each other. And yet they'll go all out. You'll see as we get towards the final, it gets heated and the competition gets heated. But at the end of the day, it's like respect. And I think there's some good life lessons there for all of us.
Yeah. How was Swifty on the grill?
Swifty is great on the grill. He's not great he's not great doing landscaping, but boy, he's good on the end of a long spatula on a barbecue.
Yeah, he took the plastic off the burgers before he put them on the grill.
He knows his barbecue. He knows the heat. He was talking to me about the heat.
Well, he's used to standing next to the heat. So,
so he knows. I mean, I think that's probably why he's so good. Honestly, he was like, you got to get the temperature right. You don't want it too hot, but you got to get, you want to cook it through. And it's just science. It's just a certain amount of heat and a certain amount of time and then a certain amount of thickness on the meat. Like he had it dialed in. So it was kind of nice. It was just a little break before everybody headed home in their vans, in the damn van.
In the damn van.
I was going to say, were the vans that they built in the team challenge operational? Could they have driven that thing home after the challenge?
Not really. No, I mean, they were barely, they functioned, but they were barely functional. Mm-hmm. Initially my idea was to have them, I wanted some kind of punctuation, something to end it with. And initially, my first instinct was, let's get a pile of tires and we'll have them drive through the tires. And then we're like, probably not a good idea. That might activate the airbags.
So then we Savage Crew like hooting and hollering in victory, and then like
boom, the thing blows up. I mean, it would have made for a great shot. And just so you know, we are saying all of this to all of those listening. We are saying this in jest. We were not really considering driving through tires. It wasn't a thing that happened.
So I'm guessing that Demolition Derby would then be right out.
Well, Demolition Derby could be done as long as it's done safely. I mean, they do Demolition Derby. If we got a 5-point harness and you've got like good, protection around everybody, that could happen. But, safety is number one, Jess. Okay. All right. Safety is number one for us.
Yeah, you're no fun anymore.
Phil, could you give us a tease for what's coming up next week? So it's going to be the final team showdown.
Yes. Final team showdown. And you heard it here first. There may or may not be some surprise guests.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Bet it's
all
Freight
right.
Train.
Okay, we'll see.
I don't know. I think it's going to be that very particular nail gray paint lover from a couple
Oh,
episodes ago.
yeah,
I think he's
Mr.
finally
Mr.
going to
Paint
show up.
Man.
Now
I
paint
know.
my roof.
Michael, do I need to explain to you that that's a fictitious character that I made up, and that there is no particular man who is very particular about his wall and who's wealthy and who had dirty hands do a whole bunch of work for nothing, and that I did not break any labor laws? Do I need to explain that to you, Michael?
But the twist is that he really is a real guy. But
Yeah.
he's gonna explain that he compensated everybody fairly.
Yes. So yes, you're absolutely right, Michael. The particular man is going to turn up. He's got another job that needs to be done. And he said, I've got some great news for you. There's a good news and bad news. Those of you who get the job done first will get paid. And those of you who finish the job last will not get paid. At the end of the day, I get my job done. Yes, so he's going to be turning up. This is a joke.
Yes.
I really hope it's just Phil in a top hat and a mustache.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm totally a real guy.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
Monopoly
You sound-
man. The Monopoly
sound a
man's
lot
going
like
to turn up
Phil.
with the cane and the hat.
Monocle. Yeah.
So final team challenge. It's a showdown because we're at 4-4. There's $72,000 on the line because of the $60,000 cash bonus plus the $12,000. You know what I have right here? I was going to send these out to everybody.
Yes.
It's a big stack of cash.
Yes. Phil has walked away from his post,
I'm so
and
intrigued.
he's
by
coming
this.
back.
I
with
was gonna
something.
go and get my copy
I hope
of
it's
No
not going to be
Opportunity Wasted off the
oranges.
shelf.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to send all of these out to the winners of the challenges. The
Yes.
team.
Oh, that's so
These are the
cool.
badges of honor from season 2.
Yeah, so I'm holding up the badges of honor, and can I just give you guys credit? You got me to reduce the size of the badges of honor because you said I was spending too much money on printing,
Yeah.
And now they're shippable.
And you were saving you money on
right.
postage.
and
Yeah.
you're saving me money on postage. So this one will go out to Freight Train,
Okay.
Right?
Yes. Okay.
This one
That is
Beautiful.
the painting the lines. for the
and
people
this one
listening
will
to the
go to.
podcast.
This is a test, and this one will go to.
Scott.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the car
And-
pick apart. Painting the walls.
I believe it was that.
Hmm.
I think that was a Swifty one.
That was Swifty. Correct. Ding!
Yes.
You need bells here, Rob.
Sorry.
Bells. Yeah. Okay. Hey, bells.
Hey, Bales. Okay.
Okay.
Boy. That was a dirty hands win, and so
Was that a Knuckles? No.
not Knuckles?
He may love island living.
Oh,
Zeus.
Zeus.
And then this is that's Arida.
No,
For
that was Knuckles.
This is the landscaping challenge won by Knuckles.
Knuckles.
This one here,
Okay.
Oh, that was that's
The
Tara.
lobster traps. Yeah.
Tara, and
Tara.
I think I have one more.
Okay.
The barn
That was
raising.
the very first challenge of the season. Building the garage.
Won by
first-
which team?
Was it the Savage Crew?
Savage
Yeah, it
Crew,
was
right?
Scott, it was Scott.
And that was Scott. So look, you guys are doing pretty well. You've paid attention throughout the entire season. I give you
Yes.
give yourselves a bell there, Rob. Ding. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't participate, so don't give me a bill. It's
No.
all the two of you.
Come on.
Yes,
Jess.
they jumped in, don't you think, Jess, and didn't give you a chance to answer.
Phil, don't
Come
bury
on.
us on the podcast.
Listen, her son's got a great plaid shirt, better even than yours, Rob.
Mhm.
Anyway, I'm going to be sending those out, and then what else can I tell you? I think that's about it, right? Do you need anything else from me? Oh, and the individual challenge. So yes, from the individual, we go from 5 down to our final 4,
Mm.
and the showdown in the overtime is pretty spectacular,
Mhm.
and we go into our finale with all about the individual competition and our final 4 and from 4 down to 3. And Jess is laughing because she's seen Rob pull a calendar out.
Yes,
and she's
well, we
wondering
have
what's
to
going on.
update to April
Yeah.
on our Tough as Nails calendar. I thought I was going to see who's Mr. or Mrs. April, but no, we have our season 1 teams. I think this was from the pilot, from the first challenge working on the rail lines. I see Miles here with like a pickaxe working on putting together some miles of track.
Yep, episode 102, which was combined with 101, and so went as a 2-hour special. I'm glad you got your calendar. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Well, speaking of that, Phil, since there's going to be 4 competitors going into the finale, should we expect a 1-hour finale, or is it going to be another 2-hour finale like last season?
It's a 1 hour. Yep, it's a 1 hour, and it's good. It's we're just, like I was saying just before I got on the call with you, we were doing the final notes, and it's looking great. I think you guys will be happy. We got some good feedback from the network, which is always nice. And we're good to go. Have you guys finished your main meal yet? Can I, because I think the dessert menu might be coming around.
Yeah. Well, we always appreciate you making time for us, Phil, and we're looking forward to seeing who is going to walk away with the championship for the teams last week. This is a redemption story for Dirty Hands, or can Savage Crew make it 2 in a row?
Yes, exactly. And look, as I get off and leave you with the check once again, please say interesting things so the production team are happy, because they're happy when I'm off and they're happy when I leave. How's that?
Mhm.
I'm not even sure if that makes sense. But
'Cause
anyway,
they get you back. Yeah.
Yeah. Say interesting things. Be captivating. Give my best to George.
I certainly will.
And I'll catch up with you guys next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Phil. Thank you
thanks,
so
Phil.
much.
All right. Take care.
All the best. Bye. All right, and our conversation with Phil Keoghan is sponsored by our friends over at Geico. Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I bet it could be hard work, but you know what's easy? Bundling your policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy, and it's a good thing, too, because you have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, see how much you could save. It's Geico Easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com. Okay. All right. What else from Tough as Nails, episode 8? Only 2 weeks left to go.
I gotta say, the individual challenge reminded me, I know that Phil talked about, purposely creating an out of the ordinary situation, but man, it reminded me so much of Double Dare, between like the sloppy material, between having to work around a really awkward object to get things from one place to another. It immediately transported me back, and Phil transformed into
Mark Summers.
That's
Summers.
his name. Yeah, that I immediately lost his name. But yeah, Phil became Mark Summers in that moment, only a little less OCD, having to negotiate all the oil being spilled.
Yeah, the coveralls really kind of made it. They just needed like the goggles and the coveralls, and I think particularly Sarah's blueberry coveralls.
Yes, yes. She said she felt like she was in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, well, she was the only one who got a color that popped. I noticed everybody
Yeah.
had like slightly different shades, and then you got the like super saturated blue one for Sarah. You always knew where she was in the drone shots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what the wardrobe was like in that, because I also noticed that all of the embroidery on the name tags were all completely different as well. Each and every person had a different font. Was there like a super nerdy person in the graphic design department being like, what font is Swifty? Let me
Yeah.
try to figure this out.
Okay, you get Proxima Nova. You get Calibri.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I got stuck with Papyrus. This sucks.
Exactly. Angel, you're wingdings.
Let's see. We had some questions from the listeners. Let's see. Nick Fishman wants to know, if Sarah was the blueberry, could you tell us who the rest of the Willy Wonka kids are from the cast?
Ooh, I feel like Knuckles has Charlie Bucket energy.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I could
Like,
see it.
very humble, I feel like she's the person that would be gifted a chocolate factory at the end of like, oh, I don't deserve it. She just has like a very good heart. Maybe it's because Knuckles sounds like Bucket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Phil is going to turn over the franchise to her at the end of the season. Is that what it's going to be?
Knuckles, you've won. You passed the test. And Phil actually is gonna be like, Knuckles, you screwed up the oil pan. That's it. You're eliminated. You're end of rules. And then
Good day, sir.
Exactly. And then she comes back and he's like, "Oh, you've done it. That was the test to see who truly was tough as nails." And then she takes off in a big elevator into the sky at the end.
Yeah. I do think that Tough as Nails could use some sort of like a Slugworth type character of like an antagonist of like the people who
Maybe
are.
it's the wealthy man.
Yeah, the particular man who's very wealthy, who's trying to undo the hard work. That,
Zeus,
look what old Slugworth has done here again. He's broken all of these vehicles, made all these
interesting.
windows dirty for you. So
I thought it'd be more of a temptation, like, "Oh, Zeus, you must spill the nail gray paint, and I'll give you $5,000 for it."
Saboteur.
He's like, I feel like maybe he represents the looming specter of capitalism that is destroying union jobs across the country.
Now, I do think that something that should be added in is at the end of every episode, I do think the Oompa Loompa should come out and sing a ballad for the eliminated contestant.
Here for it.
Of what they did wrong, Mike? Is that what they
Exactly.
highlight? Yeah.
What do you get when you take apart engines?
Or don't read the instructions. Yeah. Then also Nick Fishman wants to know if you could pick anyone to cheer you on during the challenge, who would you pick? Jess, is there anybody that you would want to see from this Tough as Nails crew be your moral support?
I mean, honestly, Meryl did such a good job this week.
Yes.
It was, and I think Stelly did a great job last week too. I think it's really hard to quantify. Like, I think I'm going with Angel though, because
Yeah,
I feel
that's
like I feel like he's the classic motivator. He's gonna be
Yes.
like, he's gonna keep me running. I'm gonna not want to get tired in front of Angel, who's yelling at me to do better.
But if you're ever out of sight for Angel, like, Jess, where are you? Jess!
Yeah, I think Angel is the right answer here.
Yeah. Also, Mike Mora wants to know, was it banned to fold up the edges of the oil pan to make it hold more and spill less? Could you bend that, Jess? I mean, it wasn't like made of like it wasn't like something that you would like take to
Roast a turkey in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't seem to me like that was something. I think maybe you could
Maybe
like
Zeus could have done it.
when it got a little wobbly. I could see like you had the hands and it was kind of twisting and wobbling. I think if you like had one hand on each side and you kind of jerked it up like this. For people that are not watching the video, I'm making very particular motions with my hands and it's not good podcasting, but I think if you kept it sort of concave, you might be able to keep a little more oil. But I was trying to figure out if there was a good way to hold that thing.
Yeah.
Like, could you put one hand under it? Would that be better? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, coincidentally, Mike, the last two episodes have had challenges featuring like a big part of winning the challenge was not spilling between the overtime between Meryl and Arida, and then also this challenge here with the oil. So it's maybe we should get like a waiter or a waitress in the next season of Tough as Nails.
And then you rename the tribe Steady Hands.
Well, I was gonna say
Steady
it's less dirty hands, more steady hands here in terms of balance. Yeah, I think that the problem with the tray was that it was too big. Like, I think the surface area as well doesn't help unless you're like Magneto. I don't know if you can bend the tray to be able to hold on enough oil at that point.
Okay. Anything else from episode 8 of Tough as Nails?
Anything else? I think I've gotten to the end of my list.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I'm good. We went through all the parts, so we have a fully assembled pod car that we can drive off now through a big foam wall. I did like that ending as well. It was a little, again, a little made for TV cheesiness. Obviously, the real people that are putting cars together do not do that at the end. Though they do test the airbag, so maybe that's part of it doing the job.
All right. So we'll see next week a special guest on Tough as Nails. Could it be Drywall Danny? Could he be coming back to host the Drywall Challenge?
Now, if that's the case, is he going to be like, much like the captain was socially distanced,
Yes.
is he going to be like on a roof far away?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could have him outside and sort
So
of like
how do we know it's really him then? Couldn't they just get somebody to dress up like him and stand on the roof 100 yards away?
No,
A
there's only
Danny
one-
stand-in?
Yeah.
Only one Drywall Danny. So we'll see what's going to happen next week as we get to the final team challenge on Tough as Nails, followed by the final individual challenge of the season in 2 weeks. Okay. Jess, what do you have that you are working on?
Well, I mean, apart from obviously going to train my 4-year-old to say time to go to work, I'm also covering The Walking Dead over on Post Show Recaps, and Chappelle and I are just about to wrap up season 10 finally, and then we're going to go right into Fear the Walking Dead because we have it on good authority that it's going to be a great season, and we're just having so much fun. It's really a joy to talk to him every week. And then this past week, I was on community building, which I think is where we had the long conversation about Knight Rider. I can't actually remember. I do a lot of talking. Yeah, not Knight Rider. It's a different thing. But yeah, we talked about, and my favorite episode of Community over on Community Building. It was a great time. So I encourage people to check that out. And also, like the network in general, we're doing a lot of fun stuff over on Post Show Recaps.
Okay. And then, Mike, what about you?
On that note of Post Show Recaps, the usual weekly fare as of late, Lost Down the Hatch, The Bloom Files, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier is going to be approaching its halfway point by the time people are listening to this. So we're going to be breaking all of that down, as well as maybe a couple of other PSR surprises. And then over on the reality TV side of things, Survivor South Africa, we just did a 2.5-hour interview with the winner of Survivor South Africa Season 5, a 7-year belated deep dive. It was very fun because he was like, oh, okay, I don't remember doing that, but I guess I did. It's a really interesting memory test for him as well, and also to get their insights too. And we're going to have some more deep dives coming up in the next couple weeks as well, as we're leading into a couple months before certain new Survivor is finally coming our way. And on the note of Survivor, Rob, I'm going to be with you next week. You, me, and Taryn Armstrong coming together on the pyramids to talk about Survivor Guatemala, the 27th, 26th?
27th best season of Survivor Guatemala. Yes.
Listen, in my opinion, way too low, but
low.
We'll save that for another conversation. I've been watching it back. I've been really enjoying it. These contestants are proving they're tough as nails, considering they are playing Survivor in 114-degree heat.
Yep.
So I'm excited to get heated as I talk with you and Taryn next week about it.
Okay, so we'll talk about that on Wednesday. But last night I talked about the 28th best season of Survivor. Survivor Fiji had a great time talking with Aaron Robertson and Gia Worthy about all things Survivor Fiji. Over the weekend, I will be back with our patron feedback show. Every weekend, I do an additional podcast about the season that we talk about on the countdown, and I take all of the questions we couldn't get to on the panel on our patron podcast feed. Not to mention lots of other great stuff going on this week, in addition to everything Big Brother Canada happening on the podcast. Also, the Wives of News AF took over on Tuesday. That was a lot of fun with Nicole and Rachel and Liz, if you missed that one. And then on our reality TV RHAP-Ups feed, Brittany Haynes and Matt Hoffman joined the Temptation Island recap this week with Kirsten and Maggie to talk about the latest episode of Temptation Island. Of course, that's all up at robhasawebsite.com. And of course, the start of a new month here on Rob is a Podcast is a great time to jump in and become a patron of the podcast. In addition to everything we have going on in our patron podcast feed, on Friday night, we're going to have our first ever patron Survivor trivia night. Jordan Kalish is going to join Zach Brooks for our patron trivia event, plus lots of other great weekly activities. Last week, Mike and I did another patron Brant Steele. And at the end of this month, last week of the month, I'm going to be doing a new Patron Orientation meetup, where if you have any questions about being a patron or just want to say hi, you could join me on the last Tuesday of the month, where I want to get a chance to meet all of our new patrons at robhasawebsite.com/patron. All right. Anybody have anything else? That's going to do it for us here again. Thank you for checking out our Tough as Nails coverage. Have a good one. Take care, everybody. Bye.